nice to see you.
You too.
I forgot to get water. I know. I didn't use the restroom, but I kind of thought, you know what? I need to get up during the meeting. I'll get up during the meeting. But we don't have it. Oh, you need to go get your cup of water. You want to? Are you sure? 100%. Oh, thank you.
You made me laugh. All right, here we are. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our July 15th meeting. We are calling the meeting to order. We always begin our meeting with an invocation or a moment of silence, and so before I do that, I always ask that you silence your cell phones. So make sure they're off before we begin our meeting. And then we will begin our moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. And now, if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Smith, announcements.
Good evening, everybody. Larry, if you would just tab through the announcements for me. It seems like our clicker is malfunctioning. All right, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So just two quick announcements for you this evening. First up, we just wanted to remind everybody that street resurfacing projects on town-owned roads is underway around town. And during this time, you may notice some contractors working in neighborhoods. Work began on June 30th and will run through the summer. We have the full list of streets being resurfaced available on our website at huntersville.org. Larry, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, sir. And just a quick bit of news here. The Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization is accepting public comments on the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan through July 19th. And so those comments will help shape CRTPO's list of priority roadway and transit projects that will be funded and implemented through 2055. You can visit our website for more information, or you can visit 2055mtp.org to share your feedback with them. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Any questions for Ethan? Okay, thank you. And now we are on to item number 7, agenda changes, adoption of the agenda. Have a motion?
Actually, I can make a motion to add item 10I to the agenda, new town hall furniture contract.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And now may I have a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And now may I have item number 8, a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Oh, whoops, skip the presentations. All right, we have public comments. We have Amy Hallman and we have Lee Hallman, who has yielded time to her, so you have 6 minutes.
Amy Hallman. I live in Sherwood Forest. I am here because I have a property within 250 feet of the rezoning petition at 106 Gilead. I received notice about it. I've been pretty vocal in working with the family that lives next door, and I've talked a lot with
Amy, can you speak into the microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've spoken with Northstern and tried to speak with some of you. I actually spoke at the public hearing. Thank you for removing option B, whoever removed it, thank you. Thank you for understanding that the two options are not the same, not in any way. It was very frustrating to hear an elected say that they were. I really do appreciate that very much. Thank you for working on the tree save. I want to remind you that this is the work of Rachel and the Ingalls, as staff told them not to do that. The trees just couldn't be saved. So I appreciate them going above and beyond to save those 3 trees, trying to save those 3 trees at least. That's very nice. I'm true to my word that I said I would support this project as long as the Ingalls get what they asked for. They live next door. Originally, the 2 houses were from one family, so it made sense that they were together and that they were so close together. So that's what I'm here to speak on about buffers. But I am not against the project. I'm not screaming about the project, but I do believe the Ingalls need to be supported in what they want. The buffer is a real issue. This is a point on which North State really needs to concede, not the Ingalls. Think about this, that issue, and we are quiet, possibly even happy. That would be amazing if we could get there with the buffers. The ordinance, which was changed specifically in response to explosive town center downtown development in 2022, not some long time ago, the ordinance should not be ignored the first time it is challenged. The HOAB, the planning board, and the town board approved it at 40 feet. Is there a middle ground? Absolutely there is, I'm sure, but it's not 10 and it's really not 20. The word undisturbed should mean undisturbed, and as I'm told that there's some discussion about what that means. If Emily's taught us anything, and she's taught us a lot, it's that if the word is not explicitly defined, it's the most obvious definition that applies. So somebody shouldn't have to call and say, what does the word undisturbed mean? It should not mean sometimes disturbed or partially disturbed. It's undisturbed. Based on signals, you're going to vote for this and you're going to approve it. But please, I'm asking you to make sure you leave nothing to assumption. Spell out everything. For example, who's watching over this? Please don't make the Ingalls be the ones sitting on their porch making sure the trees aren't getting run over by bulldozers. Sorry. If staff had a question, I suggest they come to all of you, not just the motion writer. What happens if the trees aren't saved? What happens if there's an accident? Those are the kinds of things that I want you to be prepared for when you say, yes, please bring it. I will add that before wind of a potential additional parcel was addressed, and while staff has told you that that would be a separate rezoning, the horse is out of the barn at that later time. And I do not want you to commercialize Sherwood Forest further, and I'm saying that to whoever needs to hear it. I know at least a couple of you are like, oh my gosh, it's her again. But no, I actually have property within the limit, and I got the notice. And I appreciate Commissioner Bergsman reaching out to me to ask my opinion. I know that's not everybody's favorite thing to do. And I really just do appreciate that. We look forward to the commercial parts, especially a restaurant, and the improvements that will be made to the already outstanding 760 Craftworks. We do not want the Ingalls to feel encroached upon, and we will not support an extra road that just commercializes Sherwood Forest. But Rachel has done an outstanding job helping North State, I want to say, and I hope that everything that she has worked hard for them to get done in our downtown, that they will stand behind her and make sure that it gets done, because she has really put herself out there. So I think that's really about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And next we have Jerry Ingalls, and Rachel has yielded 3 minutes. So you have 6 minutes. So you have 6 minutes, Mr. Ingalls.
Very suspicious of that coin, so I'm going to take a better look at it. Hi, I'm Jerry Ingalls. My wife, Rachel, is here as well. We're here to address a rezoning, and I want everyone to understand we're not opposed to this rezoning. We're opposed to this iteration of the plan, okay? And I'll try to specify that as we're going along. Actually, we would welcome additional retail downtown, okay? First, let me tell you a bit about why we're concerned. We're a large family. We have, if we all get together, there are 38 of us. And that doesn't count the boyfriends from the 8 grandchildren who are getting into that age. So we have no desire to sell and move, okay? To sort of paraphrase Mark Twain, rumors of our imminent departure are greatly exaggerated, okay? We're not going anywhere. That's number one. Number two, we tried. We have met 5 times with representatives from North State, okay? 2 public meetings and 3 personal meetings, okay? Each time we come away from the meeting thinking, well, we've come to a meeting of the ways. And each time there's something that's just not quite right when we see the plan. They have never sent us the plan. We get the plan from staff, okay? And when we get it, there's something wrong, okay? Count the first meeting, way back a year ago, okay? We met with 2 representatives, 2 principals in the company. They told us what was going on, and we were fine. We asked them, how many units? And they said 27. Well, imagine our surprise when we finally got a copy of the plan in March. There were 55, okay? Even that's okay, guys. That's not a problem. We don't have a problem with that, okay? What we have a problem with is what that entails, okay? Quite frankly, the last time we met with them was in June the 19th. We came to an agreement. A 20-foot buffer between our house and their building. When we get to the parking lot, we even agreed to allow a 10-foot buffer. Until we got the plan, the 20-foot buffer became 15, okay? I'm talking about undisturbed, coming back to Amy's comment. And the 10-foot buffer, that was fairly interesting since they were taking down trees that were within the 10-foot buffer, okay? I think that's not kosher, okay? So here's what we're suggesting. I have sent the board a copy of their page 4, which shows that they want to take down trees within the 10-foot buffer. Okay. Now, we don't want that. There are not the 7 trees that are on their diagram. There are 20 full-grown trees in that buffer. Okay? What's going to happen to those trees? We have come to the conclusion that we have to ask the board, okay, to set a 20-foot undisturbed buffer between these 2 these two properties to run the length of the common boundary, okay? After all, 40 foot is required by the ordinance, so 20 foot should be no problem, right? Okay. We'll end here with 3 questions. Why, and these are for the people involved here, why are you so intent on ripping out an existing green buffer only to replant it? Okay? There are 20 trees within 10 foot of our property line. You're going to rip all that out? Okay. I walked out on our back porch before we left for here and looked at the house next door. I couldn't see it because of the trees, okay? And you're going to put in, and I quote, okay, 2-inch diameter, 8 to 10 feet tall saplings 40 feet apart. Well, we've seen that before. I can look out my front window and see what's on the west side of the first phase of this. Take a look if you'd like, okay? Second question, why not design a building specifically for this site? This building isn't for this site. I can promise you that. The building has a footprint of 165 feet. The lot's only 217 feet. That doesn't fit, not with a buffer, okay? You were counting on it not being a buffer, okay? Why not give your architects the freedom to do what they do best? Design a building that actually fits. I've never met an architect that wasn't creative. Give them license to be creative and design a building that fits on this lot, okay?
Mr. Ingles, your time is up.
Okay. Final question. Do you know the definition of undisturbed?
Yes, sir. All right, now we're on to item number 8. Can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
I should have said this during discussion, I guess, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the Public Arts Commission for the work they've done on the sculpture tour, and for, we're getting a refresh, and that's what a lot of this consent agenda was. So we're going to get all new statues, sculptures, excuse me, along the pathway, the Greenway. So thank you for the hard work to that group and to Tracy Hauk for running it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, item number 9A, conduct a public hearing for petition R25-06-12300 McCord Road.
So, good evening. Lauren Spate for staff. I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. R25-06 is a general rezoning request by Robert and Heather Dubiel to rezone the property located at 12300 McCord Road from general residential or GR to transitional residential or TR. The property is surrounded to the east, west, and south by single-family residential properties that are zoned general residential, and to the north are single-family residential properties that are zoned transitional residential. On the screen are the uses that are permitted in the TR zoning district. Overwhelmingly, residential single-family developments are constructed within the TR zoning district. Because this is a general rezoning request, the site plan is not included, but I can answer any questions that you might have about that or density requirements. The proposed application is consistent with policies LU 1.1 and 2.1 in that the proposed rezoning is within the town core character area and it is also within the 2-mile corridor of I-77 and NC-115 that support moderate density, and that is as long as it is comparable to the existing development that's surrounding it. Staff find that the request is consistent with the criteria for rezoning application in Article 11, and additional data will be required to demonstrate compliance when a development application is submitted for the site. We are at the public hearing stage this evening. As mentioned, the planning board meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, and town board final action is proposed for August 19th. The property owners are here this evening. Any questions for staff? We're welcome to take those at this time, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay. Any questions for the property owners? Okay. Commissioner Bergsman has a question.
Yeah, thanks. And I know for this type of rezoning, we don't need site plans, correct? But I was just curious if there was any indication of what the plan is for the site.
Sure. So if the property owner doesn't mind me saying, one thing is that the property is large and they've been cutting the grass for a long time there. So they're trying to get some relief with that. But they're also leaning towards a farmhouse cluster there, which has a maximum of 6 units that you could achieve. But ultimately, they would be proposing to rezone this, not for them to develop, but for someone else to develop. And as far as we can currently tell, the only other option that you have for any greater density would be a major subdivision, and we're not sure that, based on our current assessment, we're not sure that you could really support anything greater with a major subdivision with this lot alone. So it would probably have to be a compilation of surrounding lots to get something greater.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Laura.
Okay.
Item 9B, conduct a public hearing for petition TA 25-01, a request by Huntersville Planning. Laura again.
So, good evening again. I would like to enter the staff report into the record. So, this will be the first of 3 text amendments that I'll be speaking about this evening. So I want to make a couple of notes just at the beginning. First, I would like to thank all the staff that contributed their expertise or reviewed these text amendments. And then next, because of the extent of these text amendments, all sections are not going to be shown in the public hearings, but they're all published online. And of course, we welcome any feedback from the public or from board members. Some background to this text amendment. So there are 2 parts. The first, the necessity of this text amendment came when we got an inquiry from a property owner that wanted to build a quadplex in the town center zoning district a few years ago. And as staff was helping that person through that process to determine the applicable building type and to also determine the lot requirements, we found some overlap in our residential use and residential building type categories that we're seeking to resolve with this text amendment. And then unrelatedly, House Bill 488, let me make sure I get this correct as well, will apply to 1 to 4 unit dwellings. So the single family building code would apply there. What that means in practice is essentially if someone wants to construct a 1-family, single family detached home up to a quadplex, they would be allowed to only submit a building permit for that. That's not our current process, but we have to be compliant with state requirements. So we're seeking to make sure that we're revising that as a part of this text amendment to help that process be more efficient for our staff and for applicants with that. So some of the overlap that we found, based on the current definition of a multifamily home, triplexes and greater would be categorized as a multifamily home in our definition. The application for multifamily homes has been consistently apartment buildings, not triplexes. The definition of an apartment house, so this is the building type, would currently apply to duplexes and greater. And once again, that's also not been the application there. Our attached house building type is quite expansive, but it also includes duplexes. So one of the challenges here that's quite obvious is that you have duplexes categorized into two different building type categories that have two different sets of requirements. And as a part of this text amendment, I'll explain how we're proposing to separate that. And I also want to mention this, because it is very important, that a part of this text amendment, we do not propose any downzoning in compliance with 160D-601D. So any residential structures that are permitted today in any zoning districts, we're not proposing to change that. We're not proposing to change the allowed density of those different structures. So if you're allowed to get 30% of your units as apartment dwelling units, you would still be allowed to do that as a function of this text amendment. So to disentangle all of the overlap, the first thing that we're recommending is that the building types that are included under the permitted use category are all replaced as residential uses with a corresponding definition. So that is included as a part of this text amendment. The next, and this would be helpful for applicant staff, anyone reading our ordinance, and if you've seen other ordinances, it's similar to what we're proposing here, is that rather than the attached house building type, we're separating into very specifically the building types that you're allowed in each zoning district. So it would no longer be a broad category. It would say townhome, duplex, triplex, or quadplex as applicable based on the zoning district. So this is just one zoning district example here. So for example, in your R and TR zoning districts, you're allowed duplexes and single-family detached homes as your residential building types. So that's what you would see there. So this is related to what I was mentioning about the allowed density of your attached house units. So here we're just spelling out which type of attached houses you're allowed to have in each zoning district. So each zoning district doesn't allow this broad sweep of different types of residential buildings. This is an example from our neighborhood center zoning district. So you will be allowed to have your duplex, triplex, quadplex, townhome, et cetera, up to not to exceed 30% of the total number of dwelling units in a project, and that would be in a major subdivision project. So one of the things that we had to do with this text amendment was actually create a category for our duplex, triplex, and quadplex building type. And what you'll see here is just a duplex, but this layout will be applicable to all three. You'll see an example here with a detached garage in the rear, no detached garage with parking in the rear, and then parking in the side yard. This is very similar to the current requirements for a duplex, triplex, or quadplex. Here we've created the category for a townhome building type, which is also similar to the current requirements for a townhome. One example has a garage that's a part of the home, and then another has a detached garage. One of the reasons why we wanted to also make this change was because our current building layout or lot layout applies to duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes. The difference is that townhomes are on individual lots of record. This has been a frustration for the Register of Deeds and County GIS because folks are subdividing these after the fact, and they should not be doing that. So this would also be helpful in that respect. Revisions 7 through 10 are unrelated to the overlap, but have been kind of existing miscellaneous items that are relevant to residential uses. So the first is that every building type that we have in Article 4 requires that the buildings be generally parallel to whatever their frontage condition is, whether that's a greenway or a public street. The only exception is the detached home type. So we're proposing to add that. You would still have the exemption for homes that are created as a part of an exempt subdivision. So if you're gifting a lot to a family member, for example, you would be exempt from this requirement still. ADUs being permitted for single-family detached homes or townhomes only, this is a current requirement. It's just not stated very plainly in one sentence. So that's all we're proposing here. You have to go through multiple sections of the ordinance to figure this out. ADUs are proposed to no longer be registered with the planning director. There's currently no registration for ADUs. You submit your building permit, it's reviewed by county staff, and zoning reviews it. We will still be reviewing it. We're just removing this additional line that's not being used, essentially. The ownership regulation of primary and accessory dwellings. So there's a requirement currently that the same person owns both, and staff are proposing that that requirement be removed in terms of regulating the ownership of those structures. And then lastly, it seems that maybe in the course of a variety of text amendments, the term storefront has been used interchangeably in the ordinance with shopfront. We don't have a storefront building type. So we're just proposing to change it to shopfront because that's what is intended. And then the last is the definitions for the various terms that we've been using throughout this text amendment being defined. Staff finds that this proposed text amendment is consistent with these regulations of the 2040 plan, or these policies of the 2040 plan. And we are proposing for a planning board meeting next Tuesday and final action August 19th. I can take any questions at this time.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, about 3 slides back, you said something about ownership, and I was getting ownership of primary and accessory. So if somebody has an ADU, it's on a piece of property. Somebody owns that property.
Yes, so the zoning ordinance currently says that the same person must own both structures on the single lot of record. So you're looking at like a condo kind of situation there, and staff has never kept a register of who is owning the different structures on one single lot of record. We're just looking for the property owner when the application is submitted for review.
But when you say the property owner, the building owner, I guess I'm confused. So if you have a house and I put an ADU on it, I still own the property.
I think she's talking about the use of the unit being different. So the owner of the property is the same, the underlying property owner is the same, but as far as having someone who is utilizing the primary as a residence and someone who's using the other as a residence, that could be different.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Bursman?
Are there other municipalities that, I'm also, same slide, third point, are there other municipalities that do or ask for registration when a property owner has an ADU, or is the standard generally not to do that?
We're not aware of other municipalities in the county that require this, not in Mecklenburg County.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. We don't have any more questions for that one. So we'll go on to 9C. Conduct a public hearing on petition TA 25-04, a request by Planning Department. Brad Priest.
Good evening. I'll go ahead and put my staff report into the record. So, as you see in the staff report, the background of this project is a little bit of a history lesson for the past 10 years. But before I get into an abbreviated history lesson, I will say that our 2040 plan kind of asks us to have this conversation, and that's kind of why we're here. So policy EOS 4.2 asks us on a regular basis to try to review how we do tree save and tree mitigation in the ordinance to see how we can better reach our goals. And so staff is kind of given that assignment, and we started that process. So looking at how we do tree save, we went to the Environmental Sustainability Committee, had a couple ideas, made some recommendations on what changes that we can make. They came to the town board and said, hey, we'd like to make some changes, and you guys asked staff to draft up a text amendment. So that's how we're here, right? So getting into a little bit of currently what's required, that's necessary too to understand what tree mitigation is. So here is a box that essentially shows our tree save requirements for the town of Huntersville in a nutshell. So the requirements vary how much you're supposed to save based on what zoning district you're in. So if you see the top, you see R, so that's your rural zone, TR, a little bit more dense residential, GR, NR, denser residential, then you have your commercial and mixed use districts, okay? So you go down and the tree save requirements change, all right? So a note here that per this application that we're sending today and through, these are not proposed to change. The actual tree save requirements would not be modified at all. What is proposed to change is the footnote that you see highlighted and pointed out. Okay, so that's your mitigation. So I will want to just take a moment too, because it does matter in regard to the tree save requirements. On the left-hand side, you see the canopy. So there's two different types of tree save requirements in Huntersville. You've got canopy, meaning if you've got 10 acres and it's completely wooded, then that wooded area, 50% or 35% or 10% of that wooded area, the woods, is supposed to be saved. So that's one kind. The second kind that is heavily emphasized for commercial districts is on the far right-hand side, is specimen trees. So those are individual trees. If you have a nice 40-inch oak, 10 40-inch oaks, then you're required to save half of them, or 35%, or 10, or 30, right? So those two different kinds. Through our history, the canopy requirements have not been a problem or an issue, and I'll get into that in the history, because when you think of residential development, you think of R, you think of TR, you've got a lot of streams, you've got open space requirements, you have a lot of opportunity to save more trees in that situation. And so the canopy tree save, which is very usual, it has not been something that a lot of mitigation is proposed. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So you look at the footnotes on all the tree save requirements, the number 2. So that essentially says in this paragraph, you're able to mitigate or have flexibility from the tree save requirement with certain conditions. And that's what that footnote is. So essentially, we have a tree save requirement, but you don't have to physically save the trees. You can mitigate them or contribute to the town tree fund bank for trees to be planted in a different area, or you can cut down the trees and you can actually plant new trees on the site if you've got room for it, if there's physically room to plant trees. So that's the mitigation. So what we've looked at through the years is we get some tree save, but we don't get a lot because of this mitigation allowance. And therefore, in the 2040 plan recommends take a look at this from time to time to see if it matches what our goals are. And so that's what we're going through with this application. Now, getting into that brief history lesson, there's been a focus in the last 10 years to, again, not necessarily change and modify the tree canopy requirements, because mostly that's residential. We've gotten a lot of it in that regard. We've really paid attention to specimen tree requirements for commercial and residential for that matter. Because prior to 2015, if you wanted tree mitigation, you had to go to the planning board. The planning board was in charge of kind of approving those applications. And the issue was the planning board kept getting these applications for tree mitigation, and they would have to approve them because there was no conditions for it. And the mitigation per the ordinance was not equitable to the trees that were being removed. For instance, highlighted there, if you had a 40-inch oak, to mitigate it, all you had to do was contribute or replant one 2-inch tree. So that was it. The planning board said, wait a minute, we're not getting what we're supposed to be getting here for tree save requirements. So they formed a committee. They looked at the issue, trying to balance commercial and development feasibility with saving of trees, going through that delicate balance. They came up with a 2015 text amendment to say, we need a little bit more. We need to encourage more tree save. We need to get a little bit more trees to plant if you're going to take down those trees. So they changed the text in 2015. One 40-inch tree, basically the math comes out to 6 newly planted 2-inch trees, 30% of the caliper. So that was that. Planning board is still reviewing applications, go through time. We're still getting all these applications. They're so quick to do this. So let's try again. 2020, same thing happens. But now the text amendment is approved for 100% of the tree caliper that is removed from the site has to be replaced. You have to accommodate for it or plant it back on the site. So the 2020 text amendment is currently where we stand now. You can still do mitigation. It's staff approved now. What we get is equitable. If you take down a 40-inch tree, 20 new 2-inch trees are required for mitigation. So what happened? Over again, the last decade, the planning board and staff is trying to delicate balance the discussion of, well, what's too much mitigation required? What's too little mitigation? Where's the threshold there? So that's kind of what happened the last 10 years. Where we are currently, what we're seeing is development is still quick to mitigate trees. We ultimately, when a plan comes in and staff identifies, you're not meeting tree save, here are your options. We can redesign the site to save more trees, or you have the ability to mitigate. What do you think the decided option is? It's to mitigate. It always happens. So there's a disconnect there. So the discussion is, if we're trying to meet our goals, if we're trying to meet more physical tree save, mature tree save, staying physically on the site, something probably still has to change. So what's proposed? Essentially, long story short, capping the available mitigation. So instead of 100% mitigation being on the table, capping it. So the proposed number for capping is a maximum 30% tree save for residential and 50% tree save for commercial. That means 70% of a residential site, 70% of those trees are required to stay, and then commercial, 50% of the required trees are required to physically stay. And then we would also change the heritage tree mitigation. Now, a heritage tree, as brought out in the staff report, it has most of the qualities and characteristics of a tree that could be registered with the North Carolina champion tree list. So they're really big trees, really stately, really nice trees that we want to keep if at all possible. So we would recommend going to 200% caliper there. And number 4, also clarifies what we're asking for in regard to submittals. These are cleanup items, things that we kind of asked developers to do already, but we're just trying to clarify the ordinance because there's a little bit of confusion there. So this would be the recommendation, and if a development comes in and says, well, you know what, I have such a unique situation, I've got to remove more trees, they can always ask for a conditional district rezoning to ask the town board to review that request on a case-by-case basis to get a modification from the ordinance. So that's still available to them. Just a few numbers that we threw out to give an idea of how this new language would help. So here are a mix of commercial and residential developments, and on the left-hand side, and then the next column on the right is how much they were required to save. The middle column shows what they actually saved, right? So in between those two columns, they mitigated trees. And then on the far right-hand side, you see what they would have been required to save if this requirement was in the ordinance back when they were approved. So you see a definitive increase in the amount of trees, both canopy and specimen, that would be approved. And it's good to know, too, that we are getting tree save, right? In the middle column, we're saving trees, but with this, we would actually save more. It would be faster and more effective to reach the goal of the 2040 plan if we had a threshold or a cap to stop the tree removal. Another just, for discussion, the 50-30 are not set in stone by staff, but it meets those, that common principle of, across many towns and situations, residential gets a little bit more, is a little bit more strict on the tree mitigation because they have an opportunity to do better, to save more trees. Commercial is more intensive, you've got to grade more, you've got to flatten more, so it's a little bit harder, there's less room to do it, so you're a little bit more flexible in that regard. So that's why staff chose those numbers that you see. And again, with the mitigation, where have we been in the last 3 years? Why is staff saying that mitigation is so much more common? Well, in June 2022, we had $125,000 in the tree fund bank. In the last 3 years, we've increased that by 228%. So those numbers go up. What we'd like to do is not get funds, but actually have more physical trees saved on site. And so that's the application. And we believe it's very conducive and highlights many policies of the 2040 plan. And we recommend approval for it. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brad? Commissioner Quarles?
You answered one of my 4 questions. Well, really, one of them. Are you evaluating existing or recent projects to see the impact?
I have not evaluated any recent projects. I mean, if they're in the door, if they've already been submitted, they'd be pretty much vested from it as well anyway. So they would be going under the current ordinance standards.
Okay. And doing the evaluation, do you evaluate the loss of the building footprint?
The loss of the building footprint. So that would be included in the disturbed area in the calculation. So is that what you're asking? Like, yes. I mean, that would be involved in understanding how many trees that are being removed.
Okay. And the last one, are there any concerns this could be taken as it potentially renders portions of certain land undeveloped?
Could it render land undeveloped? So,
and this is similar to the question I asked you earlier when we talked earlier today, but yes.
Right, okay. So if someone comes in and is looking to do tree save, there's still flexibility built in. So what we discussed earlier was if you've got 100 acres and you've got 30 acres and then 70 separate acres, someone cannot come in and at one point and say, I want to develop the 30 acres, use the 70 acres for my tree save, and then later come in and develop the 70 acres later and then not have any tree save. So essentially, if they want to develop the phase 1 first with the 30 acres, and they said, hey, look at all these trees in the 70 acres, we would make them plat the tree save on the 70 acres so they can't double dip. That's locked in. That tree save is locked in. So one way or the other, they would be required to have the tree save.
Thanks for this presentation and thanks for the chart, because I think that's a really helpful way to look at this. We have budgeted to hire an arborist, and so can you talk about how an arborist might help us with all of this when they're on staff?
Sure. So an arborist would be very helpful, one in the field, to be able to go out and talk about what trees are worth saving, what trees are not worth saving, giving ideas on tree preservation techniques, and giving developers recommendations to maybe modify their plans in simple ways to help tree save in that regard. But also from the planning staff perspective, just drafting these ordinances to understand reviewing the plans and then understanding ordinance requirements that would help tree save. So there's a plethora of things that are going to be really helpful that that expertise would add to the department.
And I just want to make sure that I understood it. In the normal process of a development, if the tree save ordinance did not meet the needs of the developer, they would then ask for a modification that would come before the board, and then we would decide from there, right? I want to make that clear for everyone who's listening, that it would then come to us to decide in the future.
That's correct. It would be a firm requirement, and they would have to keep the trees by right, but if there was some situation where they said, I've got to have a change, they can go through the conditional district rezoning process, and then the town board would have that ability to say, okay, is this something that we want to approve and give a modification to the ordinance for? And then with the conditional rezoning, we start talking about excellence in design. We can talk about, okay, is there any environmental issues that we could improve this opportunity while we're taking down more trees, and then have that discussion on a legislative basis.
This is comparable with other municipalities, right?
So throughout the region, throughout the state, there are so many different tree save requirements and sometimes no tree save requirements in local municipalities. We have looked at some local ones, and we find a lot of similarities to Belmont, North Carolina, a little bit in Davidson, and also in Matthews. Matthews would be very similar, where they put a cap on their payment in lieu for tree save, and once you get past 30%, you've got to go to the town board to be able to get that payment in lieu of approved. And they have conditions and requirements for that. So this type of situation where we have a cap, and if you want to mitigate more, then you've got to go through the public process. It's very similar to what Matthews does.
Any other questions for Brad? All right. Thank you for this. It's very thorough, and thank you to the Environmental Sustainability Committee for helping out with this. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 9D, conduct a public hearing on petition TA 25-06. Lauren is back.
Good evening again. I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. We're going to talk about trees a little bit more. So this text amendment is a little bit different in that it's focusing more heavily on our buffer standards. So I'll start with kind of the background here. So appropriate buffers have been expressed as a concern by the public that are adjoining new development. Builders have expressed concern with the specificity of buffer standards, which I'll talk about a little bit here shortly. And staff want to make sure that the buffer plantings that that are required by the zoning ordinance align with the intent of the function of that buffer. Sorry. So to meet that end, this text amendment has a few different components. The first is to establish a new 80-foot buffer standard for the rural and transitional residential zoning districts. So if you have a major subdivision in either of these zoning districts, an 80-foot buffer is required. Currently, there is no planting standard for that buffer. We multiply the 20-foot standard for 80 feet, well, obviously 4 times, and then use that for the plantings for that type of buffer. And then farmhouse clusters have a similar buffer as well, and so we're proposing for the plantings to be similar in both cases because it's the same width. We'd like to clarify the intent of the existing buffer yards as either opaque or semi-opaque in their performance. And as a part of that, we would be proposing to update the number and type of trees and shrubs that are required for each buffer. The second to last goal is to remove and relocate Article 9.64, which currently includes the buffer standard plantings for apartments or multifamily developments and relocate that in Article 7. And then lastly, staff propose a town center boundary buffer, which I'll talk about later as well. On the screen here is a photo of the 80-foot buffer section of a major subdivision in the TR zoning district. And staff went to complete the zoning inspection for this development in January of this year. And let's see, I don't know if I have a, do I have a, well, approximately from the mechanical equipment out to the shrubs is the 80-foot width. And it was obviously not completely planted. So as we were walking, and we were walking several developments that had this same type of planting requirement around the same time, the builder mentioned that we did not have a standard, which we know we didn't, and in practice we were using the 20-foot standard and multiplying that. Mentioned that it would be helpful for them in planning how much the development was going to cost, essentially. So they didn't have any problem with coming into compliance, which you'll see here, where they added in the plantings. So on the left is that same section with the additional plantings, and on the right is the opposite side of the street, and it actually extends for I think a few hundred feet in length along the road, their 80-foot buffer section. So they came into zoning compliance, but they just mentioned it would be helpful to have that, and we know that it would be helpful as well for plan review. I'm not going to read the entirety of this. The takeaway is that staff are proposing specific requirements for opaque buffers and semi-opaque buffers. We currently have these standards for screening, so for mechanical equipment, parking lots, and these standards are very much in line with those standards as well. So you'll see here in the far left column, where now for the various buffer types, we're proposing to indicate whether or not that buffer is intended to be opaque or semi-opaque. And in this case, these three types are intended to be opaque buffers. And then in the far right columns, you'll see the planting requirements. There are proposed revisions to these planting requirements. So the arborist that's been working with us so far, we worked with them to actually develop these standards. So that was very, very helpful. They reviewed all of these buffer planting requirements as a part of this text amendment. And one of the requests was to make sure that the plantings that are proposed here were appropriate in its width and would actually meet the intent. So it would actually perform as an opaque buffer once everything is planted. And something that would be very helpful in the plan review process with an arborist would be finding what is appropriate when the entirety of that buffer section is not vacant. So the standards that we have here assume that you have 80 foot of vacant space. And that's not the case every time. A lot of time you have species that are there, and we want to make sure that whatever's being planted cooperates with each other and it actually meets the goals. In the middle row, you'll see where we've added the requirement for the 80-foot plantings for the major subdivisions in the R and TR zoning districts. And this is going to be the same that we've proposed for the buffer for farmhouse clusters as well. Here, so we want to call attention to three other changes in this chart. The first one is the opaque buffer for major subdivisions. The current requirement is that when you propose a major subdivision that has density that's twice of what is adjoining, you have a 40-foot wide buffer. And staff are proposing that that is modified to 30 feet because the existing buffers that we have don't exceed that currently. And because of that reduction, there is an increase that is proposed in the number of trees per 1,000 square feet and the percentage of large maturing evergreen trees in that section as well. And This is an example of why we're proposing an increase. This is a development that was approved with a 20-foot buffer section, and this is what the current planting standards would require today in compliance. So that's one of the reasons why we're proposing that increase. The last two items we want to draw your attention to are the relocation of the apartment buffer. Currently, Article 9.64 requires at the greatest a 40-foot buffer section, and that's when you have the greatest amount of density that's adjoining a lower density development. And staff are proposing a standard 30-foot buffer for any type of apartment building that is on one lot or a multi-building site with apartment development. And then lastly, this is a new buffer, a completely new buffer that staff are proposing for town center edge conditions. And I want to explain this. So our town center zoning district, this would apply to properties that are in town center but are on the edge of the zoning district. And staff are proposing for any apartment, mixed use, or non-residential development that there is a 20-foot buffer for those developments. The footnote there that's indicated allows for a reduction in special cases, but the buffer would still need to be opaque. Staff finds that this proposed text amendment is consistent with our 2040 plan. And the planning board meeting for this item is scheduled for next Tuesday as well, with final board action proposed for August 19th. Take any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions? No questions? We do not have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Item 9E, conduct a public hearing for petition TA 25-08, a request by Huntersville Planning Department. It's Lauren's night.
Okay, the last text amendment for tonight, for public hearing at least. So some background on this text amendment, and it's quite a bit because this text amendment is composed of a variety of different amendments that are somewhat unrelated to each other. So I'm going to go through some, and I have a colleague here to for any questions about one component of it, because she is much better versed in that than I am, but she has been very, very helpful with that section of the text amendment. So one part of this text amendment is in response to Senate Bill 166, which was composed of changes to a variety of land development regulations, and I'll discuss that in a bit. The second bit is in regard to land development review and inspections of stormwater facilities. The third is a previously proposed text amendment to revise berm approval requirements and community meeting dates. The next is a proposed amendment to the percentage of urban open space that is allowed to be occupied by stormwater control measures. The next is a proposed amendment to remove farmhouse clusters as categorized as a type of a minor subdivision. And the last is a proposed modification to the requirements for existing features plan sheets. So I think it's been a change for a while now from the state, but the term best management practice that's been used to describe your sand filters or rain gardens has been replaced with stormwater control measure. And so staff are proposing to change this in our zoning and subdivision ordinances. Correspondingly, we're proposing a change to the definitions as well, to add the definition of SCM. And then also the state has a revised definition of built-upon area. So I'm sure you're familiar, yes, with the impervious area requirement that's been modified by the state. So we're revising that as well. And then lastly, throughout both the zoning and subdivision ordinances, we're proposing amendments to occupancy requirements. And that's quite significant. So throughout our zoning and subdivision ordinances, in a number of places, we indicate conditions that have to be satisfied before you can get a certificate of occupancy. And the state has indicated that essentially life or safety must be relevant to those conditions. So the majority of our land development requirements, matter of fact, I believe all of them, have been evaluated to amount to life safety issues, so those are remaining in the ordinances. But there are several instances where you'll see that language has been proposed to be removed because they have not been deemed to be life or safety issues. The second item is a proposed sunset clause on our SCM conversion and as-built submittals. So currently, the town has 82 sites that are under construction. These are sites, and these 82 sites have a requirement for stormwater control measures. So some type of way of treating their stormwater on site. And while they're under construction, they have a temporary facility that they have, and at a certain point, and if you want more information about what that point is, and can further specify, but at a certain point in their inspection process, they can convert to permanent facilities. And essentially what that means is that once they've converted to the permanent facility, the stormwater is being treated before it goes into our water supply system. 30% of the sites that are currently under construction are ready to be converted, and they have not been. And so what we're proposing is a sunset clause to ensure that when those sites are ready to convert, that they have a limited time frame within which to convert so that the water is being treated before it's going into our water supply system. We want to mitigate the risk to our regional water systems. We know that we're a very sensitive area, and this is quite critical for our inspection staff. They work very hard to go to all of these sites every month, and some of these sites have been under construction for a couple decades at this point. So we want them to close out, and so that we can move on to the other projects that we have. I won't go through this, but all these points, but essentially the revision to the BRM approval process, it was a part of a previous text amendment. In Article 7, we have standards for the construction of berms along thoroughfares. However, there is included a requirement that it additionally goes to planning board. And so the proposal in this text amendment is that because there is already specific requirements for the berm construction, to remove the additional requirement to go to the planning board. And this was also a part of that same previous text amendment. I know most folks are aware that board members attend community meetings for projects. Currently, the language we want to revise a bit so that those community meetings are not allowed to be scheduled on any town board or planning board meeting nights. The current language says regularly scheduled. There are times when the meetings are not on a regular schedule and they're moved, and that caused quite a bit of confusion for a couple of projects within the past year. So as disclosure, this is an image of common open space and not urban open space, but the point here still remains. The current ordinance standards allow that no more than 25% of your urban open space is occupied by an SCM. Urban open space is intended to be improved and accessible. And so the idea is that if a site wants to exceed the 25%, the proposal is that that applicant may seek relief through a rezoning request. The idea is that the sites are not allowed to exceed that by another means, which currently you would have to go, you just go to the planning board, and you wouldn't necessarily impose conditions upon exceeding the 25%. So there is the proposed revision there. The next So the current definition of farmhouse clusters classifies it as a minor subdivision. With a previous text amendment, I believe in 2023, minor subdivisions were capped at 5 home lots. Farmhouse clusters allow up to 6 and are significantly different in design than a minor subdivision. So there's a proposal to separate farmhouse clusters out as their own development type because the requirements for a farmhouse cluster are very different than a minor subdivision. And then this is actually kind of also related to the previous text amendment. The existing features plan sheet requires that you have existing trees shown, environmental features, so your buffers, streams, cemeteries, any sensitive areas or any areas that are intended to be preserved are shown on these sheets. And staff currently requests for the limits of disturbance to be shown on these sheets. And we do that because we want to understand where those limits are proposed in relationship to the areas that need to be preserved on the site. And so this text amendment is proposing to make that a requirement that those limits be shown, so that we can make sure that all parties are aligned with the areas that need to be preserved. Staff finds that this text amendment is consistent with the listed policies of the 2040 plan. And this item is also scheduled for the planning board next Tuesday with final board action on August 19th. We can take any questions you have at this time.
Commissioner Walsh?
So to understand that we have now SCMs, formerly BMPs, that have been sitting out there unfinished for 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
That would be correct.
Yeah, I think we need to correct that. Okay, thanks.
Questions? Commissioner Bursman?
Yeah, on the same one, but first, I mean, this was a lot, excellent presentation, so thank you, really clear and helpful. With revision 2, which I think was the same one Commissioner Walsh was referencing, I might have missed the sunset clause. What was the length of time that's proposed?
6 months.
Okay.
Yep. So, Ann, do you want to? 6 months.
6 months. Got it. And that's definitely, that's for ones that should have been converted already.
So this would apply, so any developments that come in, they would have, from the time that the final inspection takes place and determines that the facility is ready for conversion, they would have 6 months to convert and submit their as-built, which are the documents demonstrating how the facility is functioning, for approval.
And I concur. Thank you for this very thorough thing and for addressing a lot of issues that have come before the board and issues that, happen within the community. I think this will help make everyone's lives easier in the long run. When we were talking about occupancy requirements, and I guess the state law says life and safety must be relevant, what things are we taking away from there that aren't? Do you remember?
The state has directed, for example, specifically that certain landscaping has to be removed as an occupancy requirement. So if plantings were required as for your development, then they can no longer hold up your certificate of occupancy. That's an example. However, you would have to complete a certification indicating when you're going to complete that requirement. And then if you don't, that would essentially amount to code enforcement action, quite a bit, code enforcement action.
That's a great answer. Any other questions for Lauren? Thank you. Item 9F, conduct a public hearing on petition Annex 24-04, a request by Charlotte Everett Keith Road.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to submit my staff report into the record, please. We're here tonight to discuss Annexation 2404 for the Everett Keith Logistics Park. It is a voluntary contiguous annexation. So you can see the map here before you. The owner is Charlotte Everett Keith Road Industrial Owner LLC. The site is 64.962 acres. You can see the parcel identification number on there. Like I said, it is a voluntary contiguous annexation. And with that, I will answer any questions you may have for me.
Does anyone have any no questions? No questions? Okay, thank you, Becca. All right. Item 10A, consider adopting an ordinance approving petition Annex 24-04, a request by Charlotte Everett Keith Road.
Thank you. Again, I would like to submit my staff report into the record. We are here again to talk about Annex 2404. You can see the map before you. Again, it is voluntary and contiguous, owned by Charlotte Everett Keith Road Industrial Owner LLC and 64.962 acres. Staff does recommend approval of this annexation as all statutory requirements have been met. At this time, I'll take any questions you may have for me.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, are we ready for a motion?
I make a motion to approve petition Annex 24-04, a request by Charlotte Everett Keith Road Owner LLC to annex 64.962 contiguous acres into the town of Huntersville.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10B, consider decision for petition R25-01 to rezone 11.3 acres. Mr. Richards.
Good evening. Here to enter the staff report the record for R2501, which is the Alex Yards rezoning. Just a quick recap, since it's been a couple months since we talked about this one. This is to go from corporate business to TOD, conditional district, for a multifamily use project. This is the context map you can see in the lower left corner of the proposed site. And as you go northeast, we have a large industrial area. Quick recap on the plan. There are 10 buildings, 320 multifamily units. 8 affordable units are being proposed at different rates for affordability. Well, part of the conditions that they're offering up is from some solar requirements for the project and some conditions as to when those solar items have to be installed. The developer is here to explain that in a little bit more detail. A couple things that staff, we want to point out quickly, is that staff is not in support of this. It's not consistent with a number of issues with the TOD district, short block lengths, mixtures of uses, and proximity to the transit station. It is consistent that it's in the half-mile catchment area, and they do meet the minimum density averages that are required in that TOD. List of the uses of their support in for and against on the 2040 plan here. Back in May, the planning board recommended not to approve this project for a number of reasons as shown here. And again, staff is not recommending approval of this project. And I'm here to answer any questions, as well as the developer who has a couple updates that he'd like to provide for you this evening.
Any questions for Brian? All right.
Great. Sure.
Can you go back to the very first slide? I think it was like a map of, is that the context map?
Mm-hmm. They're down in the
I think the very first one, I'm sorry. Yes.
Sure.
So right here is where the site is, correct?
Correct, the
Then
hatched.
Okay, and then across from that, that is all residential.
That is rural, that's correct. That's in our critical watershed.
Okay, all right.
And to the south is Charlotte.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
No problem. All righty. Oop, you want to go to your,
Hello, Ben Geisler, on behalf of Alexandriana Partners, applicant. I'm going to flip through just 2 pieces. A couple of quick updates. Since our last public hearing and planning board, as Brian mentioned, planning board was actually split 5-4 against, but 5-4 split. The first 4 items are new since our last time we spoke. We have agreed to fund $125,000 in the form of contribution to the town towards a future sidewalk connection from the site going north to Hambright Road, should that sidewalk be constructed. There's some parameters on time with that. I think it's, if that happens within 5 years of our start of construction, which would probably be put at 6.5 or 7 years from now, it would sunset. And then in that, the green space that is at the corner of Mount Holly Huntersville and Alexandriana Road is intended to be a gateway to Huntersville and to the project. It was suggested, I think during public hearing, to consider some art in that area. And this would be sort of a representative area of that, has originally proposed more just gateway signage and hardscape. And we have agreed to put an art installation in that space at our expense, up to $25,000, that would be required to be installed on the earlier of the receipt of our final CO in our final building, or 2 years from receipt of our final CO on the first building. So effectively, it's no later than 2 years from when we get our first CO, but could be earlier if we finish the buildings before then. Idea is to protect the art during construction, not put it in right away. The question was asked about the CATS microtransit, given the half-mile proximity to the CATS park and ride, but the current lack of a sidewalk. We did confirm with CATS that this does fit in within the microtransit service area. The CATS rapid transit station is scheduled to break ground this year, so by the time our project is in place, in addition to using a car to get there, there would be the option of calling CATS microtransit to get there. And then I guess wanted to call out that we have gone through this process with 0 modifications requested. A couple other pieces as we've gone through this. At staff's request, we extended the urban open space around the clubhouse. We reduced parking visible from the main intersection at that gateway. We added 8 affordable units. We added 20 kilowatts of installed active solar on the clubhouse. And to clarify that from what Brian was mentioning, we are proposing 20 kilowatts of active photovoltaic solar panels to be featured on the clubhouse, not just present. Those panels must be installed on that same timeline we talked about with the art installation, so the earlier of 2 years from our first building CO or the receipt of our final CO. Reason for that is the solar consultants say in a construction site, they don't want the dust and debris from the construction site resting on those solar panels. It reduces their performance. The residential buildings will be built solar ready, primarily consisting of engineering the truss, the roof structure to receive the additional weight of future solar should it be added, as well as running conduit chases from the roof down to the electrical room. Again, to make that easier, sort of more plug and play if solar was added in the future. We added that prominent gateway at Mount Holly, Huntersville, and Alexandriana at the urging of staff. The long central greenway that's in the project, our sort of central yard, was added at the suggestion of staff. And twice, this is the third different site plan, we rotated the site 90 degrees and then almost 180 degrees, looking for a superior site plan. So while, and established the clubhouse as a terminal vista at the end of that green, looking up through the site. So while we're not, staff's not able to recommend the project, I do feel like we have worked hard to meet both commissioner requests, planning board requests, and staff requests to come up with an excellent project. And just from our perspective, from a land use, LU5 focuses more intense development in locations like this with easy access to 77 and 485, less than a traffic light away, supported mix of land uses in key locations, all the retail that is going in at Town 1, which is that half-mile walk from where we are, certainly kind of supports that. The LU 8.3, in particular, the last sentence, consider ways to encourage transit-supported development proximal to future CATS rapid bus stations. That's a clear check mark for us. And then improving access to parks, which as from that proximity map, that bright green outlined area is the future North Lake Park. So at that, that is what I had today. And appreciate everyone's time and consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
I know that you listed 8 affordable housing units. Can you kind of expound on the qualifications in regards to those affordable housing units?
I kind of just did a quick recap because we've been through this twice. But this was our original attainable housing slide. We have 8 new units, roughly 19 residents. It would be kind of split 1s, 2s, 3s. Those will be floating units in the development, which means there's not a designated affordable unit that has, inferior finishes or in a poor location. It's just when units become available, if we lose an affordable unit, the next unit that becomes available needs to be made an affordable unit. 4 of those will be made available to households earning less than 80% of area median income. 4 will be for households earning less than 100% area median income, and that'll be deed restricted for a period of 15 years, which kind of meets the overall intent of the types of folks that we're trying to house in Huntersville: teachers, essential workers, young professionals. That's really our target with that.
Any questions for Ben? Yeah, Commissioner Kroll.
Can I get clarity on the time frame again for the installation of the artwork? You said it, but I didn't hear it clearly.
Yeah, so it will be, the art must be installed on the site on the earlier of 2 years from the receipt of our final CO for the first building. So if we only ever build 1 building and we just stop, 2 years later, no matter what, we'd have to put that art in place. Or if within, by the time we get our final CO for the final building. So if the building was all 10 buildings built out in 13 months, we would be required to install that art on month 13. And the reason for that is, again, to kind of protect that art so it's not damaged during the construction process.
Have you been in touch with the county on what their estimated timeline is for that supposed North Lake Park back there?
It's not on their schedule currently, but we have been coordinating with them. They've identified what type of park it will be. It would be similar to Clark Creek Park, which is on this kind of just sort of east and south of us. It's a similar 27-acre site that, with some active, some passive, mountain bike trails, pickleball courts, a pretty engaging sort of amenitized park. Their indication was, with the amount of development coming in this area, it's getting closer to being on their schedule. There are 320 units that just developed to the southeast of us, which would have been, if you look sort of to the plan right here, south of that industrial building, you see that's Charlotte, but those are leasing up now. There's 300 units there. The illustration that you see in there, there's 356 units that are in their 4th review cycle with City of Charlotte. Those are a duplex cottage and a quadplex product that they expect to break ground at the end of this year. We've been coordinating with that developer, and then our site as well. So as that density comes, there's also some new construction happening south of 485, but north of North Lake. It just puts it all that much closer, and I think County Capital Improvements Director was supportive of our project, indicating that it was would be complementary to the park as opposed to an industrial use, as we heard, I think, at our public hearing from some of the residents nearby.
You mentioned art a couple times. What does that mean? Like, what kind of art are we talking?
Yeah, so the conversations we've had, it is difficult to define art. Which is why we put a budget to it, so it's something meaningful. But conceptually, the idea is to have something that has a little bit of height. So we've talked about something that in that area, in that area that's kind of light green. We anticipate there's some grade change through there, so we may have some retaining wall, or it's like stone wall, or core 10 steel wall. Having that art sitting up above grade 2 or 3 feet, so it gets some presence. And then something that would probably be, on the order of magnitude of 12 to 14 feet tall, so that and it could be different, might be wider, but something. Again, this is obtuse, but the idea being something that is, when you see it, you would say, oh, that is the, and on a grand scale, everyone's familiar with the bean in Chicago, right? We are not putting the bean, either size, scope, or budget. But when you see that, you go, oh, that's the bean, or the Firebird in downtown Charlotte. You say, oh, that's the Firebird, you know it. So something that's not completely abstract, but something that, I think I did just a little, this is not what we are proposing, but as a third example. If you look at the bottom left corner, there's some poppies there. Those are like a chrome steel with a big red metal flower. Not what we're proposing, but something that when you're driving by, it would catch your attention. It looks like enough like a common object that you would call it a thing, and people would say, oh, we live in this area, you make a right at the thing.
A resident did make a great suggestion, and I'm not taking credit for it. I would like to. But since this is the gateway to Huntersville, something that would say established 1873, somewhere there. It was an excellent idea because you're coming from North Lake, you're leaving Charlotte, and when you come into Huntersville, we want you to know that you are in Huntersville. And it was an excellent idea, and I'm happy to be able to make that request.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we have that sort of, conceptual rendering of this area. I would say this will change pretty significantly with the incorporation of a large piece of art. I don't think we would have the timber and the stone columns. Like that we would want the focus to be on the art installation. I still see a want and a need to have something that says "Welcome to Huntersville" and and established. But again, working this area, we also have a couple of large trees in this area we're working to save, and working in and around them, being respectful of that, and trying to create something that really is compelling, both for Town of Huntersville, but also for the project, right? We want it to look nice, so people want to live there, and ultimately walk through there to get to the future North Lake Park.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ben or staff? Okay. Do we have a motion for item 10C?
I make a motion to approve petition R2501 to rezone approximately 11.34 acres located at the intersection of Mount Holly Huntersville Road and Alexandriana Road. The petition is consistent with policies LU 5.1, LU 8.3, and LU 10.1. This approval is in condition. 1, installation of the proposed 20-year clean energy photovoltaic solar panel system on the clubhouse and solar-ready buildings for future possible installation as noted on rezoning note 17 on the plan as revised on June 10th, 2025. 2, provide the town with $125,000 towards the cost of any future extensions of the sidewalk from the site north to Hambright Road along Mount Holly Huntersville Road, if constructed by the town. Developer will work with the staff to satisfy this condition. 3, including an art installation within the development at the cost of no less than $25,000 in a location approved by planning staff, no earlier than 2 years from the receipt of the CO of the first building. 3, providing at least 8 attainable units at or below 100% AMI for a period of 15 years. 5, all remaining staff comments and red lines, being addressed by the applicant. With these conditions, it is reasonable and in the public's best interest to approve the petition because the site is within the area designated by the 2040 plan for higher intensity development and promotes attainable housing options.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Hunt?
Since the county purchased the land for the park, I think it changed that area in some pretty significant ways. And so it feels like the 2040 plan really no longer speaks to the character of that area in my estimation. I think that what the applicant is proposing here is a far more attractive welcome and gateway to Huntersville than what would be allowed there currently, as we saw in one of those illustrations. I think there's a lot of value add that we're seeing here with the 8 affordable units, sidewalk connection, solar, art. There's a lot of value added here, so I am in support of this.
I'll be supporting the approval this evening of Alex Yards. While the 2040 community plan envisioned this as a commercial property, the county buying the surrounding property, in my mind, changes that envisioned use. What better situation can you have than housing being buffered on two sides with a county park? For those who will eventually call Alex Yards home, a county park they can walk to will be a nice amenity.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Dumas?
I just want to reiterate, I totally understand why staff and planning board declined or recommended declining the project. Their jobs are truly to follow explicitly the 2040 plan. In our roles, we get a little bit more flexibility to review what's changed over time, and the property just no longer makes sense to be a warehouse. So I believe that this welcome to Huntersville versus warehouse is definitely a better option, and we're getting things like the sidewalk contribution and CATS connection and solar and attainable housing. And I agree with the rest of the board that has spoken. Absolutely a valuable addition to Huntersville, and I want to thank the developer for working with us on finding options that can make this a value add. Thank you.
Commissioner Bergsman?
Yeah, I know I had some hesitancies without having the mixed-use component, and I definitely, when our planning staff are against a project, I think about that long and hard. So I just want to say one of the things that really helped sway me was the fact that during our public hearing, we had multiple folks come up and speak, and they all prefer this to what it's currently zoned for, and that went a long way with me.
I want to piggyback on what Commissioner Bergman said. What I salute you for is you had support from the community. That speaks volume. But also, there's a slogan that they said about 2 years ago, Huntersville, the town above Charlotte. This project really is a project that's above what's across the street in the city of Charlotte. I think when someone comes into the across Mount Holland Huntersville Road, they will want to know what's more inside of Huntersville. So again, I want to thank you for working and negotiating with us. I know it was tough. We went back and forth, but we want to make sure that when we have these projects, we can get skin in the game. We all want to make money, but also we want to make revenue for our constituents, and I want to thank you for being a partner.
I guess I'll be the last to speak. I want to ditto pretty much what everyone has said, but I also want to keep in mind, too, that, again, growing up here, seeing the area develop in the way that it has, but it's also a little disheartening to me because another older church that sits there is being surrounded by some development that's happening. So it's refreshing to see that there will be a new thing that's coming into the town that is bringing a new fresh feel and new residents that can see that we have a place where you can serve and worship as well, not too far, not even a mile up the road. So that is commendable. But thank you also for just hearing us out, working with us, working with staff. I know it may seem a bit discouraging when you hear that it's not supported by the experts. However, again, you went back, you did your homework, and you came. So thank you for that. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 10D, and before we do that, we need a motion to recuse Commissioner Bergsman.
I make a motion to recuse Commissioner Bergsman.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, I missed 10C. I sure did. All right. We're on 10C, not 10D. We are on 10C, consider decision to petition R25-02, First and Church Street Townhomes.
First, I'll submit my staff report into the record. Just a quick refresher. The applicants, Better Path Homes, are proposing to rezone a 1.147 acre site off of First and Church Street from neighborhood residential to neighborhood residential with conditions for a 14-lot townhome subdivision. Since we've last been here, there's a few site plan updates. The first is that all the tree save has been addressed. All the zoning requirements will be met. And then second, Unit 14 is being offered up as an attainable housing unit for families and individuals with incomes below 100% of the AMI. The applicant has also stated that they would offer this up as a 15-year affordability period. As well, the planning board unanimously recommended approval on June 24th. For staff recommendation, staff does recommend approval of this rezoning as it's consistent with the 2040 plan and the downtown master plan. Staff is also recommends approval of all 6 modifications. In addition to that, staff does have 2 recommended conditions. The first is that all remaining staff comments and minor site plan notes are addressed. And the second is that the affordability period needs stated as a condition. Again, the applicant has stated their intent for 15 years, and staff usually recommends 30. If you have any questions, I can answer that for you. If not, the applicants are also here if you have any questions for them.
I see on here it says not planting the required yard trees. Are those being planted like around the walking path and urban open space instead?
So they're asking for a modification from the front yard, so they wouldn't be planting those. I will add that additional trees will be planted as part of their mitigation for their tree save.
Sorry, I meant like, are they going to be planted elsewhere? Like there's that walking path that was described. Are they going to be planted there, or is it just mitigation?
Are you referring to the modification on the screen?
Yeah, the yard trees.
No, they're asking for a modification to not plant those trees.
Okay.
Yeah. We're in recommendation for that as these are an urban building. And as they're going to be up against the street, there's just not going to be room for those. This ordinance kind of stems from back in the 90s when this ordinance was first created, back when it was more of a suburban style building type. And now this is, you're seeing it more of an urban area.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bergsman?
This might be more for the applicant, but I just wanted to hear from them so the one unit that's set aside for the attainable unit, if that's going to be using the same product as all the others of a same level.
I apologize. Can you repeat yourself? He was coughing and I was walking up. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
So the one unit that you're setting aside as an attainable for sale, is that going to have the same product level as all the other units, or will it be an inferior in terms of?
Yeah, so exterior-wise, yes, it will have all the same to match, but interior, it will be a lesser spec level.
Okay, can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so instead of if we did engineered wood floors in the main units, we would do an LVP. We would just downgrade every spec level for the affordable housing unit.
Would you be willing to consider doing the same?
I think with affordability and already offering a affordable unit housing and only being 14 units, it'd be really tough to present and give the same options in all units as we would for the affordable housing unit.
Okay, thanks.
If you don't mind me asking, this is for the applicant, what is your price point for your townhome?
So as much as I wish I could answer that, I mean, with market and conditions and still designing the actual structure itself, I really couldn't specifically say what our price point will be. And I don't want to give you a range because I don't want to be stuck to anything. But similar to what the market rate is currently in Huntersville for a 1,600 square foot unit.
The reason why I'm asking is because this affordable housing unit, it will be for sale, is that?
That's correct, yep.
Okay, and so will you be working with, or and maybe you might not know this, partners such as like a Dream Key or Housing Partnership or a NACA to kind of assist with down payment assistance, or?
Yeah, we're working through that right now, and the reason why we really chose the 100% AMI is it supports the local workforce, you know, trying to directly benefit essential community members, teachers, nurses, public safety, you know, who might be making a little too much more money to get the affordable renting, but can actually afford a home in the area that they work in or nearby.
In pricing out a unit, say 1,600 square feet, do you know the difference in the cost from LVP to engineered flooring, like wood flooring?
Off the top of my head, no. I can get pretty close, but I can definitely let staff know and give them.
It's about $3,000.
$3,000 total?
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about installation all in. I mean, it depends if we do it in bedrooms, if it's on the stairwell. A lot of factors add up into that. And at this point, I don't know exactly what we're putting in every single unit, so I don't know if we're doing engineered hardwood floors and hardwood floors up the stairs. It's all about what we can afford to then be able to make a profit on the project.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do you have any other presentation you want to share, or, okay. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I would like to make the motion to approve petition R25-02, First and Church Street Townhomes, a request by Better Path Homes LLC to rezone approximately 1.147 acres from neighborhood residential to neighborhood residential conditional district for a townhome development. The modification requests set forth in the staff report are approved. Plan approval is conditioned upon the following. Number one, the plan shall include a note that Lot 14 is to be an attainable housing unit for families of individuals with income below 100% of the area median income for a period of 15 years. Number two, all outstanding staff comments be addressed by the applicant. With these modifications and conditions, the petition is consistent with policies LU 1.1, LU 2.1, LU 5.1, LU 5.3, LU 7.1, LU 9.1, DT 1.2, DT 2, and DT 6 of the 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve petition R25-02 because it is consistent with the area's character and recommendations of the 2040 Community Plan and Downtown Master Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Hunt?
I think this is a good infill project where we want to have some increased density, and I appreciate the connectivity that it provides to downtown as well as the attainable housing unit.
Commissioner Bergsman?
So because of the smaller nature of this project, usually I don't like what I just heard, but I acknowledge that it is a smaller project, and so I will kind of give an allowance for that. I just have one recommendation that I would like you to think about, and I don't know if you're offering for the future homeowners of all of the townhomes, like different levels of like packages for inside, but if you do that, if you can offer whatever package or whatever you're planning on putting in the attainable unit available to all of the units as an option, so that it might not just end up being the only one that has that type of flooring, for example.
Is it okay if I say something? The only thing I'll say is that we will make sure that that unit, the affordable unit, is a desirable unit. There won't be carpet throughout the whole thing. We will make sure that somebody will want to live there and enjoy their space and their company and raise a family in that unit as well.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Walsh?
In my several terms on the board, I've been a vocal advocate for downtown revitalization. This project adds to that vision and will allow these residents to be part of a walkable downtown. The people living there someday will enjoy being part of our thriving community.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Rivers?
Thank you for listening in regards to the recommendations that went to you. I am like Commissioner Bergsman in regards to ensuring that everyone feels included, especially when it comes to affordable housing. I think that we have tried to educate our residents and constituents in regards to making sure we stay away from stereotypes about regarding and surrounding affordable housing. But I do want to commend you on making this one of the first projects where there is affordable housing that is being purchased. That sets a precedent. So thank you for that. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we are on item 10D, and we need a motion to recuse Commissioner Bergsman.
I make a motion to recuse Commissioner Bergsman.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay. You are recused, Commissioner Bergsman. Item 10D, consider a decision on petition R25-03 Mint Landscaping. Mr. Richard.
Yeah, good evening. Brian Richards for the staff, here to enter the staff report into the record. Just a quick recap. This is out in the south of McCord Road. It's currently zoned general residential. They're asking to be zoned special purpose conditional district. It's approximately 3 acres. During the construction of the Spring Grove subdivision and the rezoning hearing, it was discovered that a business was being run at this location for a number of years, and this is their attempt to come into compliance with the town's ordinances. They're asking for several modifications. One is a frontage and access easement to be allowed for this project. The reduction of an 80-foot buffer down to 30 feet, and instead of having paved parking, they're asking for gravel parking. The tree save at the site, excuse me, the requirement is 30%, they're saving 76%. And at some point in time, when the Siegel Street extension ventures north up through this area, it will pretty much render this proper uses. So this is like an interim use. We feel it's a good use. It's been used for a number of years without any complaints or anything from any of the neighbors. So we are in support of this condition. Here are the support of this case. Here are the supports from the 2040 plan, and also the one dissent from the 2040 plan. Planning Board did recommend approval on their June 24th meeting, and staff recommends approval here, and we're here for any questions you may have, and the applicant's representative, and the applicant's here as well.
Any questions for Brian or the applicants? This one's pretty clear cut. All right, is there a motion for item 10D?
I make a motion to approve petition R25-03 Mint Landscaping. The request buffer modification, unpaved parking modification, and street frontage modification are approved. The approval is conditioned upon the following. The future right-of-way needed for the Siegel Street extension is reserved on the plan. All outstanding staff comments be addressed. With these modifications and conditions, the petition is consistent with policies LU 6.3 and LU 8.1 of the 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve the petition because it supports an existing Huntersville business and is consistent with the 2040 Community Plan.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to bring back Commissioner Bergsman?
I make a motion to bring Commissioner Bergsman back from recusal.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Let's bring back Commissioner Bergsman. All right, we are on to item 10E, consider decision on petition R25-04, the Hullbrook Phase 2. Mr. Priest.
Good evening again. I'll enter my staff report into the record. So yes, this is an application for conditional rezoning, and we're here to discuss potential final action. So just a quick recap before I just kind of focus on the updates of what has taken place with the application since the public hearing. So here we are at 106 Gilead Road, just down the street here. The application is to rezone to TCCD, and the existing zoning is neighborhood residential. And again, just a subject site and surrounding in the downtown. I went ahead and had a couple slides, and some of the information is kind of older, but the information that's bold is an update. So on the updated plan, they did increase the application for the total square footage just a little bit. Used to be at 60,000 square feet, it's up to 68,000 square feet. The applicants want to clarify too in one of their notes in regard to the residential units. It's up to 55 residential units rather than just 55. So that'll be a clarification. And then also in regard to the application itself, there's no Plan B. So we remember there used to be two different options, different development techniques. Now it's just one, the one you see before you here. Updates in regard to the modifications. So there's been some fluctuation, but where it stands now in regard to the buffer reduction in disturbance, it's a 20-foot buffer up near the building, up near Gilead Road. And as you go back to the parking lot, it transitions to a 10-foot buffer near the parking lot there. And the disturbance varies a little bit throughout, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The minimum commercial space, if you remember, we've kind of discussed about we didn't understand what the size of the commercial was going to be, wanted to calculate it a little bit per the ordinance, and so they did that. It's still a modification because the requirement is 60% of the first floor per the ordinance is supposed to be commercial. They're modifying it to be 55% of the first floor, and staff is okay with that modification. It's still the majority of the first floor up on Gilead Road. And then they are seeking, they clarify the request to seek a modification to the TIA ordinance and not be required to do a TIA. So wanted to just take a slide to focus on the buffer a little bit in regard to the disturbance. So there is a 20-foot buffer as discussed, and it's 20 feet near the building, 10 feet in the back. It is disturbed in that 20 feet, as was mentioned, and you see how here. So if you look at the plan, the limits of disturbance is highlighted in yellow. And I tried to give some measurements on the tree save plan that identifies the distance from the western property line to the limits of disturbance. So if you look at the bottom of the map there, you've got about 16.5 feet from the property line to the disturbance, then about almost 17 feet near the 26-inch maple. And the disturbed limits kind of, you can't, it kind of bends around the canopy a little bit around there and punches out, goes back to about the same width, and then it narrows down as you get back toward where the parking lot would be. So clarification in regard to the expectations west of that line. From the disturbed limits line to the property line, staff would expect that many of those trees that are too small maybe to get surveyed would stay. If it's a tree, if it's a large shrub, the request would be to stay because it's there. We've talked to the applicant about that a little bit lately too, and they agreed to a condition that said that this disturbed limits wouldn't get any closer than that, and the rest of it west of that line would be undisturbed. So they can talk about that as well afterwards. In regard to this as well, the applicants have submitted an arborist tree preservation plan for several of the trees that you see highlighted in gray there. So not only, they would disturb within the tree limits, so the staff can't count that as tree safe in regard to the ordinance requirements. However, they have submitted a tree preservation plan as part of the application that says that they will take precautions per arborist recommendations in order to keep those trees living. Antifungal treatments for the roots, fertilization, specific tree root methodology to keep the tree roots healthy are from the ones that are remaining. So that is part of this application. So with those conditions and arborist recommendations to keep the mature trees near there intact, staff is okay with the buffer being 20 feet and 10 feet in the back. I will say and point out that the tree that's located as a beech tree, not the applicants, but the neighbors, Mr. Ingalls, did say that he did not necessarily want that gone. So again, any trees or shrubs west of that line, staff would just recommend those trees stay. Because again, the 4-story building, 2-story building, having mature trees, keeping mature trees as much as possible in between those two is going to really help spatially and visually keep those uses a little bit separate and have that privacy. Separate of that, where there's no trees, where there's no shrubs underneath, there would be additional plantings. And the additional plantings would total 20 feet and 10 feet. So 20, 10, but the disturbance is more like 16, 10 in that regard. So just wanted to clear that up, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on that later. Also, some updates. The architectural elevations were updated to the ones that you see below. They gave us a 3D rendering that staff really thinks improves upon the articulation of the front. You can see just from that perspective, there's a lot of inundation, insets, offsets, and with the windows on the bottom, but also up top. So we really like that increase, and so we support that elevation. The note was added to the plan in regard to keeping 8 feet free, let me say that again, 8 feet free and clear along the Gilead Road sidewalk. So we make sure we have a nice pedestrian realm on Gilead Road. So staff recommends approval with the conditions from the staff report. A few of the notes we worked with legal on and recommended some changes to tweak to make sure they were consistent with state statute. We discussed with the applicant those notes, and they are good with those notes and those changes, and so staff recommends approval with those conditions. The planning board did recommend denial last month. I will say the reasons that were given and discussed were mostly because of the Plan B. That is no longer an option. Some of the items from the planning board discussion were unaddressed, and some of the staff requirements were unaddressed, but some of them have been addressed now, so we'll say that. And that'll conclude my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicant does have a few updated slides, if you'd like to hear from them as well to discuss the changes.
Any questions from Brad? Commissioner Merson?
So I know it's not uncommon for the town to hear from residents during a construction project about buffer disturbance. Can you talk a little bit about what is the town's response, or who is responsible for overseeing that disturbances don't happen, or to kind of keep an eye on things during the construction period?
So, I mean, honestly, it would be on zoning staff, and it would be on code enforcement to be able to go in and do that. So we would ask assistance with them and have to keep in contact with the applicant and request updates on things in regard to specifically the arborist recommendation and how those things are taking place. Because again, we asked about how an arborist would be beneficial to staff. Or here's one of those examples. You know, how can we monitor and make sure certain tree preservation techniques are taking place? We need somebody to help us with that. So, but it would be on us to go out and get updates from their arborist, from their contractors, and we would obviously, we could just walk outside or maybe just look out the window and see how those things are going on. But to answer your question, it would be on staff to try to make that happen.
And that's, I mean, you kind of already alluded to it in your answer, so thank you, because what I was thinking is that it will be a little, now that we've added another position for code enforcement and we're working with an arborist, both of those things will help going forward into the future with this.
Most definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Brian? Commissioner Dumas?
We received several emails this week about the concern that a development like this would bring more traffic to Sherwood Street. Can you, it's my understanding, and I well, I drove it, so I know. There are speed humps already there, correct? So we've got some speed calming,
Yes.
traffic calming already in place. I'm also we've also heard a rumor that there's potentially a connecting road going in. Can you talk about, have we been approached about a connecting road that would connect this development parking lot to Sherwood?
There's been discussions about the possibility, but it's not in the application. So the driveway for this development would need to be somewhere on Gilead Road. If at some point in the future they wanted to have a driveway to go back to Sherwood, they would have to modify the rezoning to come back and do that, and then probably get the property owners involved who they were going through the property to sign on for that application.
So they'd have to come back to us.
Absolutely, thank you.
Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit, if denied, what could go in this piece of property?
So it's currently zoned NR. So any use that is allowed in NR, a church, single-family residential, a school, in NR near TC, you can do some commercial if it's in a detached house building type. So that would be allowed. You could do a single multifamily building, up to 3 stories, and with a 40-foot buffer. Because again, the current requirement is with a 40-foot buffer. Whatever it is, if it's commercial or residential, you'd still have a buffer there.
Gotcha. This is actually a question for Chief, and it's more related to the traffic that or one of the emails we got in regards. Chief, is he napping? Oh no! Oh no! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Chief. Chief Graham, I have a question for you, just in regards to the emails we got about the traffic, and one of them addressed the fact that people are running stop signs, and I wondered if there was anything, it's unrelated to this specific project, but I wondered if there was anything we could do to help with the fact that people might be running stop signs on Sherwood.
We have Sherwood on our traffic concerns list all the time. It's mainly for school traffic and things like that. We've had several calls about the stop signs down on the end closest to 115. That's been on our watch for years. Generally, we get complaints around right before school time and after school time, and then we also get complaints about people stopping in the road. So, having that out there is not a problem whatsoever, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that.
Okay, I appreciate
And
that. Thank you.
I can't hear with the speakers in here.
Oh, okay. All right. You have a tough job. We give you grace. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
And Commissioner Dumas, I will say that prior to this meeting, I already requested to the police department to continue and enhance patrols of that area due to those concerns that have been addressed to us.
So one thing, thank you for that. There's going to be a lot of change that happens in that area. We're getting a new school, so we're going to have to readdress this in the near future. We're going to have to take a look at traffic calming or what the roads even look like in that area, correct?
Yes, and then staff is looking at doing that. We're putting out an RFQ, request for qualifications, to do a downtown transportation study, basically for the entire downtown, which is more comprehensive, talking about connections, where road connections need to be, how to build them, to look at the downtown kind of zoomed out, and where do we want to be, what traffic improvements need to be where, in more of a totality. So that's currently underway.
So Brad, is that why we're not requiring the TIA based on what you just described?
Well, that's why the applicant is requesting a modification, right, and staff is kind of going along with that because that is a current process in regard to looking at things in a bigger spectrum.
Okay. And then you were talking about the buffer, and so I just want to make sure I understand this. It sounded like you said it was 16 feet undisturbed and not 20. Did I get that right or no?
Correct. It's 16 feet undisturbed based on their current line. right? So you see the red lines there?
Yeah.
That's the width of the undisturbed area of the buffer in that place. So 16, almost 17, and then you go back, it's kind of the same, and then it kind of transitions down to close to 10 feet in the back. So the disturbance from the 20 feet, the 20 foot is planted, so it's 20 feet, most of it near the house is 3/4 undisturbed. 5 or 6 feet that's disturbed in that 20-foot buffer, if that's a better way to look at it.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? All right, y'all want to hear from the applicant? Okay.
Good evening, Susan Irvin, representing the applicant. Want to first of all thank Brad and Brian for all of their work on this. I am really here just to kind of summarize where we are at this point, and I wanted to keep it as high level as possible, but also kind of get into the differences between the original plan and what revisions have been made as a result of commissioner concerns and comments. So the first one, and the one that was primarily mentioned, was now there is no Plan B, no Western Drive to Gilead. The addition of 2 attainable units for 7 years. And originally, there was no additional specimen tree protection. This arborist plan, which I have reviewed, and I'm sure that the commissioners have reviewed in their packet, is very specific, and it deals with specimen tree protection. The original elevations have been revised significantly with commissioner and staff input. Originally, on the first plan, there was no building setback from the 20-foot buffer. And I just want to point that out because now there is a 10-foot building setback from the 20-foot buffer. What that does is help limit the disturbance a little bit. Whereas if you have no building setback, you just can't put a building there without having more disturbance. So that 10-foot setback isn't something we really have talked too much about, but it did reduce the disturbance to the limits that you saw on Brad's diagram. The building is 30 feet from the western property line with that setback. I think we've gone over the minor buffer disturbance. One thing we haven't really talked about is that there really were no green build standards in the original plan. And we know that this is something that's important to the town and that has been important to this board. So this building will meet National Green Building Standard design requirements. There was originally landscaping and open space to code. There's more landscaping and open space. I don't know why I made that so big. That was complete accident. Then the last one is the addition of a public art commitment. We had talked about putting in public art. At this point, there is a residency program, as you know, for phase 1. This is something that's very important to the applicant. So we wanted to give some parameters around it. Certainly haven't designed anything yet, but to have a $10,000 commitment of at least that much money going toward the public art, also including the Huntersville Public Arts Commission. And just listening to one of the earlier projects, I did talk with the applicant about when the public art would be installed, and it would be it would be prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the building, really for the same reasons, because you don't really want to put it in during construction. So hopefully, and these are not all of the comments, there were additional minor comments, but I wanted to kind of highlight the evolution of this plan and the amount of work that's gone into the change of the plan from the original plan to what you see now. A few just additional slides. Brad showed you these revised elevations. Those have changed considerably with some canopies and much more depth and articulation. We had a few images I just wanted to share with you about the importance of this project to downtown and activating downtown. And I put this slide in here just to, that is a comment that I have heard from commissioners and just tonight from Commissioner Rivers, that a lot of people aren't really aware of what attainable housing really is and the important community members that it serves. A few additional things supported by the 2040 community plan, supported by the 2023 downtown plan, the activation of downtown with this mixed-use building, additional residentials to use to support those businesses, 98 temporary jobs, 20 permanent jobs, 100,000 in increased annual taxes to the county, 46 annual taxes to Huntersville, and greenway accessibility. So those are just some high-level points that I wanted to make to kind of give you kind of a snapshot of the updates that have been made to this plan over these several reviews and meetings. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just two, what happens if you can't come to an agreement with the 760 for the driveway connection?
Well, I added a note in the development standards to provide some flexibility for that so that there could be a driveway on the applicant's property. But I specified in the note that it could not be west of the building to Gilead there between the building and the property line. So I know that was really Plan B, so I didn't want to create a note that kind of introduced Plan B back in, and that wasn't the intent.
I've heard from, I believe we've heard from the property owners and from you about what would be the next step if this was denied. Can you?
Sure. So the Huntersville ordinance does provide for multifamily building to be built on a neighborhood residential. One building, that was actually probably the initial direction that the applicant was going. It wouldn't be as many units. It wouldn't be as tall of a building. It would be 3 stories, but it would be all residential. And that was probably the original thought. And I just think as the applicant met with commissioners and met with the planning staff, you know, kind of the vision of having this mixed-use building made a lot more sense. You know, it's a much more a positive, but also complicated project. And so that's kind of how we ended up here.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bergsman?
Yeah, I have just a few. First one with the tree preservation plan. Can you give a bit more detail? Because I know there's lots of different factors that go into kind of protecting a tree during a construction period, like soil compaction to, you know, trunk damage. So what is the extra steps that have been proposed?
You know, I read the arborist report. I don't have it in front of me. I was very impressed with the details. Obviously, a fence required, but then some additional protection for the roots of the trees, and basically to protect the tree during construction from things that you wouldn't really even think about would be an impact of construction, like having more, you know, wood eating insects, I guess, So a lot of things like that in the arborist plan that made a lot of sense. And, the list itself of the recommendations, I would say there were at least 12 or 15 recommendations in there. And I can get you more details, I think, from the staff packet, but that, I think, was a benefit of having that arborist.
Yeah, and I did, I know I had received, I don't know if all of us received the report from the arborist, and I appreciate going above and beyond in that area. So my second question was in regards to attainable housing. And I know a majority of what we've approved during our time has been a longer time period from 7 years. And I know this is, again, not as large as, Birkdale or, some of the others, but I'm going to ask again if 15 years is something that the applicant would be willing to commit to.
I'm going to say I'm not surprised you asked that question, because I know that's, aside from sustainability, that is such an important aspect of this board. We had a number crunching session and discussed it, and Shane and the development team felt that they could do 15 years. 80% is very difficult. They might be able to find candidates at 80%, but I think having a 100% commitment or below, really as a practical matter, when you have a household of 2 people, sometimes they can just almost make that 80%, but they can't, and that really eliminates people. So having the 100% and below, broadens the group of people who are able to take advantage of that. So I would ask for the 100%.
I am fine with that, if the rest of the board, and that can be reflected. So I am hearing that I'm getting a yes on this?
Yes on the 15.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then my last question was actually about phase 1, and this is more based on just, I get questions all the time. So I didn't know, while you're here tonight, if you happen to have any updates on some of the commercial spaces. And, Corkscrew, that sign's been there for a while. We have a lot of excitement for when the new businesses will be open. So I'm curious if there's any updates on when that might be.
Hi, everyone. Rachel Krenz. Yes, we're very excited about it as well. The Corkscrew sign, yes, it drives me crazy that it has a timeline on that. They have changed some of the design of their project, and so they are resubmitting their design to go to permitting soon. So we're hopeful they'll be open by the end of the year, or, we'll see how their process on permitting goes. But Corkscrew will be open. B&Co Hair Salon should be open in about a month. We have 2 other tenants that we have one that's about to sign the lease any minute that then we can announce, and one that's another lease. We have another one space left that we have a lot of interest in, but we want to make sure it's the right fit, and so we're being a little hard on that last tenant space, but we welcome any tenant leads for this project and that one as well. But the amount of interest in the first phase is one of the reasons why we felt good about doing this, because there's only, in the first phase, the way the spaces are designed, you can't have a restaurant in every single one of those spaces. Like, it's just not feasible, much less the parking on that side of the street. It just won't work. We have the ability now to take all those interested parties in the restaurant and be able to bring them over to the other project. So that's an exciting piece of it. So it's good.
Thank you. And I just want, y'all know me, a pet peeve of mine is buffer encroachment. That's where a lot of those text amendments earlier came from. And so I just want to strongly encourage y'all to, if this passes, to do the very best to stay out of the Ingalls property as much as possible and mitigate it as fast as possible if any mistakes come. I know that sometimes that happens, but you'll hear from me if that happens.
Thank you. We hope that will not happen, definitely.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve rezoning petition R2504-04, the Hullbrook Phase 2. The approval is with the following modifications. Number 1, buffer width between 10 and 20 feet as shown with mature tree preservation plan commitment. Number 2, buffer disturbance with enhanced new evergreen tree plantings with no disturbance any closer to the western property line than shown on sheet Z02.2 of the plan. Maximum building height of, number 3, maximum building height of 55 feet. Number 4, first floor area is a minimum 55% of code required commercial space. Number 5, massing modification to allow a 4-story building as shown adjacent to a 2-story single-family home. Number 6, no TIA or traffic impact analysis is required. Number 7, the entrance to the residential units is not required along Gilead Road because it would reduce the commercial space. The approval of the petition is conditioned upon the following. Number 1, 2 attainable housing units will be offered at or below 100% AMI for a minimum of 15 years. Number 2, the body of the rezoning Note 3 is replaced with the following language. The proposed improvements shown on the rezoning plan are schematic in nature. The exact location and architecture of the units and building may be modified as approved by the planning staff during the design, engineering, and construction phases of the development, so long as such modifications are within the boundaries of the conditional district rezoning and compatible and in harmony with the general layout of the rezoning plan. Number 3, the body of the rezoning note number 5 is replaced with the following language. The general architectural elements and articulation depicted in the south elevation conceptual rendering plan as part of the applicant's commitment. Number 4, the body of rezoning note 11.1 is replaced with the following language. Notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph number 6 of these rezoning notes, if the petitioner is unable, using commercially reasonable efforts, to obtain driveway access at the location shown in the rezoning plan, an alternative location to access may be approved by the planning staff in accordance with NCGS 160D-703B, so long as the alternative access, A, meets ordinance standards to access the property, B, is not to Gilead Road between the building and the western boundary of the property, and C, the inclusion of the alternate access does not require any modification, any ordinance modifications. Number 5, rezoning note 11.E is removed in its entirety, and the subsections of rezoning note 11 are renumbered according to reflect the deletion. Number 6, the plan call-out related to outdoor dining is replaced with the following language. Any outdoor dining must be approved and permitted by all applicable permitting agencies and entities. A minimum of 8-foot clear pedestrian path must be maintained from the line connecting the trunks of the fronting street trees backing back to the building. This 8-foot path may include the tree grate area on the building side. Number 7, all outstanding staff commitments are addressed by the applicant. With these modifications and conditions, the petition is consistent with policies LU 1.1, LU 5, LU 6, EV 2.2, EV 2.3, and DT 11 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan, and key recommendations on primary gathering areas of the Huntersville Downtown Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve the petition because with modifications and conditions, the development will, number 1, establish an adequate buffer and preserve mature trees to ensure appropriate visual transition between adjacent properties. Number 2, provide pedestrian connections from the property to the residential park and greenway. Number 3, incorporate public art. Number 4, contribute to the public good by including attainable housing. Number 5, support the continued growth of downtown Huntersville by providing needed commercial development along Gilead Road. And the building is also designed to meet an industry green building standard, NGBS Bronze.
Commissioner Walsh, just one matter I want to clarify in the motion.
Yep.
You had several conditions. Condition number 3 referenced changing a rezoning note. I believe you said rezoning note 5, but I believe it was supposed to be rezoning note 9.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that was
Yep,
the intent.
that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay. For 9, correct?
9, yes, sorry.
All right, and is there a
I'm
second?
done.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Walsh?
I'm very much in support of the project and promoting downtown revitalization. This project is just another piece to that puzzle of that revitalization. The sister project, or maybe I should call it the Big Brother project across the street, represents the single largest investment in our downtown ever. The Hullbrook Phase 2 is another investment in our downtown. The board continues to support and build upon the vision of making our downtown a place where people can live, work, play, and yes, thrive.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Quarles?
Mr. Siegel, I want to say developers develop so they can build assets and sell. What impresses me most about you is you are a long-term holder, and you prove that you want to be a partner. What many people don't know is that this board, we've spent a lot of hours and months to get to where we are today. In the beginning, as Brad said, staff didn't approve this project, and the planning board did a great job raking you guys over the coals. I salute them for what they did, but the beauty of this is we as the board, we get a second shot at negotiating. This project started with 0 affordable housing. Now you're committed to giving us 2 affordable units, where I'm sure that some police officer, some firefighter, some nurse, someone may work at Starbucks will benefit and be able to live in downtown, which we know most downtowns are the most expensive places to live. But you're willing to commit to affordable housing downtown in Huntersville. I want to thank you for the 100% AMI, which I had to add to my notes. I want to thank you for agreeing to 15 years versus 7 years. And this is an opportunity for us to enhance our downtown. As Commissioner Wall said, we try to revitalize it. We know that if we do not revitalize our downtown, places like 760, Slice House Pizza, Choplin's, those places are going to be challenged. So again, I want to thank you for bringing business in that was going to complement those, because again, we love 760. We want to make sure they do the best. We love Slice House Pizza. So we want to focus on small businesses. So again, I want to thank you for being a community partner. I look forward to voting in favor of this. And again, thank you for your hard work and just dealing with this board. I know we're difficult, but everybody know that we want affordable housing. And again, I'm going to be trolled about this, but we make sure you bring skin to the game. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Bergsman?
I just want to say, well, first of all, removing option B. I've always felt like that was a no-brainer. I wish it wouldn't have taken so long, but I'm glad we finally got there and that happened. And also, I know there are aspects to this that probably don't go as far as some of the adjacent homeowners would like. I feel that this is a good compromise for all of Huntersville. It does definitely bring in the retail space. And I feel there has been a good faith effort to mitigate the negative impacts as much as possible. I just want to remind you that as, if moves forward approved, that you continue to be, or please be a good neighbor to your neighbors.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 10F, consider decision on petition R2505 MHH Logistics.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to put my staff report in record for R2505 MHH Logistics. This is the final action decision, so I'll go over a quick refresher and then any sort of updates. So this is a conditional rezoning from corporate business to corporate business conditional district. As you can tell on the context map, it is off Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, and currently surrounded by some existing industrial buildings. Like I mentioned, the use is currently allowed, but the rezoning request is due to some site constraints requiring modifications. First modification being the stream buffer disturbance. The only update we have is that the application for the stream buffer disturbance was accepted by Mecklenburg County. So that is meeting the ordinance requirements, and then the applicant is also proposing to replant some of the buffer on site to help mitigate on site, and then the applicant has also been able to work with town and Mecklenburg County staff to identify a project within the town that those mitigation credits can be used for, specifically the South Prong Clark Creek project, which is near Asbury Chapel in the east part of town. No changes to the buffer yard disturbance. It is required to be undisturbed per ordinance. They are going in and disturbing and replanting, so there's no change to the size, and they're going to meet standards found in our ordinance, and staff is supportive of that as well. The only change from the 2040 plan is that the policy EOS 1.1 has been moved to supports, as they have had their application approved and done some replanting on site, like I mentioned. Staff still recommends approval, and Planning Board also recommended approval unanimously on June 24th. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is also here if there's any questions for them. But
Any questions? No, thanks for resolving all those outstanding issues.
The applicant smiled, not sure, just ask a question just to be doing it.
Do you have any questions for the applicants since they're here? Okay. All right, do we have a motion for item 10F?
I would like to make a motion to approve petition 2505 MHH Logistics, a request by Sky Partners LLC to rezone approximately 8.63 acres from corporate business to corporate business conditional district for an industrial flex warehouse with some office. The remaining modification requests set forth in the staff report are approved. Plan approval is conditioned upon the following. The plan shall include a note related to the swim buffer modification stating that mitigation credit fees shall be applied to project within the town of Huntersville, if allowed by Mecklenburg County. 2, all outstanding staff comments be addressed by the applicant. With these modifications and conditions, the petition is consistent with policies LU 1.1, LU 5, and EOS 1.1 of the 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve petition R25-05 because it is consistent with the surrounding development, provides flexibility for employment centers, and mitigates the stream encroachment by improving water quality. Number 1, the tree save item has been addressed and is clarified in the most recent submittal. And number 2, the applicant has verbally stated that they would like their attainable. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I'm done. I'm sorry. Let me amend this motion. I apologize. Excuse me. Got my notes a little confused. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve petition R25-05 because it is consistent with the surrounding development, provides flexibility for employment centers, and mitigates the stream encroachment by improving water quality. The end. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. All right, item 10G, consider a decision on petition TA25-05 to align articles 150.05 and 150.14 of the town's Code of Ordinances.
good evening. I'd like to put the staff report in record for TA 2505. This is a Text amendment related to NC Senate Bill 166, in particular our Code of Ordinance. It is changing or updating it to match with state statutes as far as the Fire Prevention Code to North Carolina Fire Code. There's no changes in how we enforce it. It's just a verbiage change to align with the state statutes. So staff recommends approval, and Planning Board also recommended approval as well.
Any questions? Fire code? All right, do we have a motion for item 10G?
Motion to approve TA 2505, a request by the Planning Department to amend Articles 150.05 and 150.14 of the Code of Ordinances is reasonable in the public interest to ensure consistency with Senate Bill 166 and all relevant state statutes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Item 10H, consider decision on petition TA 25-07, a request by the Town of Huntersville Planning Department to amend Huntersville zoning and subdivision ordinance.
Good evening. I'd like to put my staff report in the record for TA 2507. This is a Town Board issued a directive to redesignate the responsibilities of the Board of Adjustment to the Planning Board. Staff has then updated the ordinance to accomplish that. Here's an example of what that ordinance would look like. Staff recommends approval of the proposed text amendment, and Planning Board also recommended approval as well. That concludes my presentation.
Any questions on this text amendment? All right, is there a motion for item 10G?
If I can get through with these bifocals and this light up there, but
10H.
I make a motion to approve text amendment TA 25-07 to redesignate the Board of Adjustment duties to the Planning Board because it is consistent with the town's 2040 plan and state statute and will provide further clarification of the responsibilities designated by the town board.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Item 10I, consider approval of a contract with PMC Commercial Interiors. Bobby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is for a contract for the furniture for the new town hall, and the request tonight is somewhat twofold. If we order by the end of the month, we're looking at probably a 4% savings. There'll be a couple of orders that are made with our contractor, PMC Commercial Interiors. We're ordering materials from Hahn, which is a office furniture company that I'd say probably middle of the road as far as costs and things like that go. But the price of the items we're buying are off the state contract. So we're trying to stretch our dollars, get as much as we can, but the state contract does allow them to do some increases within certain parameters. So pricing is effective through July. August 1st, it goes up 4%. Our first order, probably looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000. So that's a $20,000 to $25,000 savings right there. And then also part of what's critical about ordering right now is by the end of the month, we need to get our order in for our workstations. The workstations have to be hardwired into the building as part of our inspection for our temporary CO, certificate of occupancy. And once we get that done and that step cleared, then we can start moving in furniture and other elements of the building. So it's kind of critical for our plan to be able to be open by hopefully opening in November, start moving things in October. So those are two critical items there. We are using the town's standard contract. It's our standard terms, and they've agreed to that. And also just want to make sure it's clear that the funds for what we're asking for tonight were already budgeted as part of the approval of the project. So when the board approved and authorized the new town hall, authorized us to pursue the financing, we had kind of allotted in that project budget roughly $2 million for soft costs, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, IT, AV, all the technology and things like that. So we're still well within that planned budget for this expense. And overall, I know the number tonight is a not to exceed of $1 million. Right now, we're currently looking around $900,000 for what we might spend on furniture. The sales tax kicks it up a little closer to that $1 million number. we will get reimbursed our sales tax, but want to make sure we've got some cushion there. And then our contract specifically calls out, as it's worded today, that we'll only be paying for the goods that are ordered and delivered. We're not just going to pay that number because you've approved it tonight. We're only going to pay for what's actually ordered and delivered, and we're still doing some tweaks. So the current estimate may not go any higher. Hopefully it'll come down a little bit. And then our vendor PMC, based on the quantities that we're ordering, hundreds of chairs, tables, conference tables, desks, workstations, all that. We're hoping that we can get another 1 or 2% off the total, which might save us another 20 grand plus or minus. So that's the request tonight. Thank you for your willingness to add and consider it.
Commissioner Wall?
Yeah, just a quick question, Bobby. Obviously, we'll be moving employees over there, end of year, next year, whatever it is. So are we ordering, when I say equipment, desks, chairs for future growth? So next year, new headcount gets approved. We're not are we doing it all at once, or are we piecemealing it?
Yeah, that's the plan, and sort of what we thought and what we took as sort of the direction from the previous board as well as this board to make sure this space is serving us into the future. So every space in the building that is finished, we will be basically ordering cubes that won't necessarily have people in them now, but may in 6 months, may in a year, may in 2 years. They may be creative storage until then, and then we'll have some offices that are used for similar purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for Bobby? Okay, do we have a motion for item 10I?
I make a motion to approve and execute a contract with PMC Commercial Interiors not to exceed $1 million to purchase furniture for the new town hall building.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Bobby, thank you for that thorough explanation of what's going to happen with the furniture. Appreciate it. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Rivers, closing comments?
Yep, really quick. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of the residents that reside in Pottstown, the traffic calming devices have gone or are going in on Dalewood. So thank you for working expeditiously. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Walsh?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Dumas?
Since our last meeting, Huntersville had its first ever Pride, and it was a beautiful day filled with love and light. The event brought over 1,000 attendees to our downtown throughout the very hot day, with several downtown businesses partaking and decorating and participating in their own events in conjunction with Pride. I even heard from some of them that they had a very successful day economically. So really thankful to all those involved with hosting and participating with the event, everybody who attended, and thank you so much. We're very much looking forward to 2026.
Commissioner Hunt?
The Environmental Sustainability Committee would like me to share a solar opportunity with residents. The committee heard from some folks from Solarize Charlotte Mecklenburg, and they talked about opportunities to get solar power and battery storage at group pricing. Homeowners, businesses, and nonprofits have the opportunity to go in on the group pricing. You can check out solarizecharmec.com to find out more details about this initiative, deadlines, and other important information.
Commissioner Quarles, no. Commissioner Bergsman?
I just want to take a moment to thank Jeff Snye for his years of service on the planning board. We're grateful for his thoughtful leadership, commitment to the town, and the time he has dedicated as a volunteer. So thanks. You're probably not listening, Jeff, but if you hear about this, thank you for helping shape the future of Huntersville.
And I just want to share one personal thing. Most of you know my father has been in the hospital with a traumatic brain injury since mid-June. And so I want to thank staff and the board and the residents and applicants for having grace with me as I'm navigating this situation with my dad, and I'm kind of off kilter a little bit. So I appreciate all of your support. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would like to make the motion that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone? Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.